I'll just start by saying that I really liked the way that we recognize and celebrate Passover. I think it's a really immersive experience where we retell the story of our ancestors, and every single year we re-experience the bitterness of slavery and the joy of liberation through the food we eat and the texts we read and the songs we sing. And we're encouraged to ask questions and think of how the story of oppression and hardship perpetuates into our lives today. I think that's really incredible. And also, I was thinking a few weeks ago what I wanted this talk to be about, and I couldn't really figure out a theme, but I knew that I should probably incorporate my story into it. And I think a lot of us have some kind of event that's happened in our past that shaped who we are and how we act today. And whether it was in our immediate past or part of our collective memory, I really think that we all have something that's shaped our personal or cultural identity. And as we see with traditions like Passover, remembering and retelling the stories is a central part of Jewish culture. Most notably, we do this with Yom HaShoah. We're told to never forget. We have a time every single year where we not only honor the dead, but actively hear the stories of the living. There's even a passage in Deuteronomy, which no one pointed me towards, which specifically commands us to remember a time when we were escaping Egypt and the Amalekites attacked us from the back. And then the line also follows by saying that you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven, you shall not forget. So I'm not really sure what to make of that, because there's definitely a contradiction of remembering and forgetting and how we're supposed to kind of process these times in our lives. Personally, I spent a lot of time trying to blot out the last 4 years, especially while they were happening. Around the end of my freshman year in high school, my dad got really sick. He randomly fainted when driving my family up to a show that I was in. I got like a phone call 20 minutes occurred that they couldn't come because they were in the hospital. And from then on, things got really weird. They put in a pacemaker because they thought it had to do with his heart, but it didn't. And he just kind of progressively got a lot more sick, and no one knew what was going on. He couldn't leave bed. He was hallucinating. He lost his memory for the most part. It was really scary. And it took years to get a diagnosis. Once we did, no one really still knew what to do with it. But I think one of the hardest parts of all that time was that I didn't really tell anyone. Aside from Lily, no one at school knew. So I was just kind of like weird and sad and quiet for 4 years, and no one really like got why. It was definitely a pretty strange period in our lives, I think, safely to say. But the good news is that the last year or so has been a time of recovery for him. It hasn't been perfect, but he's gotten a lot better. And it's definitely a way to realize how blessed we are. So now that he's well, and I have the chance to reintroduce myself in college, I've started to really open up. When I tell people what my family went through, I'm not looking for pity, I'm just telling a fundamental part of who I am today. As I'm sure a lot of you can relate, in life situations where there's a before and an after, it's really hard to associate with yourself with the before. And so I think kind of accepting that as part of your past and telling other people who you are now is really important. My dad's illness has also become something that I talk with my parents a lot, not because we want to or because it's easy, but because it's cathartic, and it's a way to mark the passage of time. So talking about the past is hard, especially with traumatic episodes like slavery and genocide and illness. So I was wondering why in Judaism and our personal lives, it's something that we all take part in. And there's no right answer, but I came up with 3 potential reasons why this is a part of our culture. The first one would obviously be to simply preserve the memory. I think a huge part of our culture is paying homage to the past, because there's really no point in being somewhere unless you know where you've come from. I think also a big part of it is gratitude. Gratitude to God, if you want. Gratitude to those who led us out of Egypt or led us out of a hard time in our lives. One thing I'll never forget is that strangers would drop off meals to our home almost every week through our congregation. And I think that was something that made the biggest impact to me in my life. So I have a lot of gratitude for them. And finally, I think we have this cycle of remembering our past so we can recognize those who are still living it today. As Izzy made a lot of us aware a few weeks ago, slavery is not over. Millions and millions of people still live in slavery today. 20 minutes away in Oakland is one of the largest sex trafficking hubs in the world or something. And I think it's hypocritical to celebrate our freedom today without recognizing their lack of freedom. Yeah, like Rachel Marcus taught us about never again and how, we should question our role as Jews in society and whether or not we feel obligated to help the genocides today. And personally, I don't really think I've changed that much aside from the fact that I just try to be really nice now. I think there's definitely something to be said for being compassionate and being present. And that's been one of the largest kind of shifts for me personally, because I know that just a little bit can mean a lot for someone, especially if they're not letting you know. So that's me and what I have to say. I would love to turn it on to you now. If you're comfortable doing so, I'd love it if you could turn to someone and tell them the story of something that shaped either your personal or your cultural identity. It could be a story from the Bible, it could be a story from a few years ago, but I encourage you to open up about that. And while doing so, think about how it feels to retell that. So that's what I got.